Hi, folks. It's Tom. I'm back with Strange Journeys and my ETs and our special guest, Lewis, this week. I hope everybody's doing great. And I hope you're tuning in and watching. And I hope you're ready to get started this week because we got a lot to cover. And I think we're going to have a good time. So, everybody say hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello. All right. Are y'all ready to get started?
Yes.
Go. And of course, we are live. Strange Journeys podcast live stream, a most unusual podcast. Now, like every show, we want to start with a latest sighting. Now, as I explained to the guys before we came on the air, we are about 2 weeks late on this sighting. But the thing is, this sighting happened while we were doing our live stream 2 weeks ago. So we wanted to talk about this one. So Dagny has got our latest sighting.
All right.
Go ahead, Dagny.
So 2 weeks ago when we were doing our show, I was almost late to the show because I was watching the launch of the SpaceX Dragon. I could not put it down, and I was like, come on, wait, it's almost over. I watched every second of that launch live stream, and you can still rewatch it live stream on I think it's NASA and SpaceX Crew Dragon launch 2020. So that was 2 weeks ago. That was on May 30th at 3:22 Eastern Time. There were two astronauts, Robert Behnken and Douglas Hurley, were launched into space for the first time by a commercial company. They were NASA astronauts, but NASA has not had funding, and SpaceX stepped up and said, let's send some people out. That was their test to see if they could get people into space successfully. While they were launching, they showed every second of it live stream. It was so amazing. Like, even the announcers knew every moment by moment detail to tell us ahead of time, this is what's going to happen next. This is what's going to happen next. However, when we're like, I think it was about 6 minutes in, T plus 6 minutes. So, there was T minus many hours and positive. And about 6 minutes after ignition, the crew finally reached 0G, where things started floating. And it was a cool moment. But at that moment, they also are showing a video link to their Falcon 9 rocket first stage, which is about to break away from them and go back to Earth and land in the middle of the ocean on a ship, upright. I can't believe they did it. They did it all successfully. It was fantastic. I can't believe what they did. But while they're showing the fins of that Falcon 9 rocket from one view and the astronauts from the other, all of a sudden you see this thing dart across the bottom of the screen, and it is unmistakable. And I was watching it that moment, and of course I'm a UFO fanatic, so I actually discounted what I was thinking. I was like, psh. But I thought it was strange that only a moment later they shut down the live feed. It's the only time they don't announce that they're shutting down the United. Originally they say, we have an expected live feed gonna fail now, and then it happens. I mean, they announce it every time except for this time. At this time, they just say they lost footage, and then when it comes back, they just say, we got it back. Well, I thought that was so strange that I took a screenshot at that moment because I was like, I just saw UFOs, I swear to God, and now you guys are shutting down the cameras. I said, that's weird. So I took a live screenshot, but I accidentally deleted it because I was like, there's nothing on this one. I said, this is a boring picture. Sternly, just a couple days after that, all these people are coming out with, everyone's saying the same thing. They saw these UFOs too, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I wasn't just dreaming them, you know? And they've asked Elon Musk about it. Elon Musk is a very sarcastic man, and he is pretty funny about his reaction to it. He's basically like, if it is, it is, you know?
Wow.
So he's not giving them very strong information. But there are two different sites I've found. Both the express.co.uk is a certain online magazine type thing, and I don't know how credible they are. They noticed it. They did an article on the cut in the live footage as the anomaly was spotted, and so you can actually look that one up. But I did find something very conflicting. Is if you go a couple weeks earlier to their launch of the Falcon 9 earlier without people, they claim the same thing. So I don't know whether to trust this source or not.
Well, I think it could be happening every time.
It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah.
But then I found another site called TRT World, and they responded that it was just the type of rocket that they used, and they tried to show you. And
of course.
I mean, they go through it scientifically and everything, and I'm very well versed in science. I have ridiculous amounts of science background, and I gotta say that to me they were making it up, completely making it up. And
all right, well, let's look at it then.
It's interesting.
All right, but you saw it yourself.
I saw it, and I decided to take a screenshot because I thought it was so strange.
Cool. All right, well, let's look at it. I found the video of the live feed, and I edited it down to the two main ones that I saw. So here. All right, Dagny, is that what you saw?
It is. The second shot that you showed was the one that I noticed live stream. And actually, there are a couple, like one other angle that I saw it from was much clearer.
All right. I couldn't find that one. I'll have to go back and see. Do some more digging.
It was that exact moment.
Well, thoughts, everybody?
It was a weather balloon.
That's
usually what they say.
Space gas or swamp gas. Well, I guess it would be space gas. Yeah. I thought it was pretty clear. You know, I'm no expert, obviously, but I saw what I saw.
One of the NASA engineers that they asked about it said it's definitely going too fast for anything we have.
Makes sense. All right. Well, we can break this down.
It's only logical.
Yeah.
It's only logical when we do something new into space, somebody's going to be watching.
That makes sense. All right. Before we get into the main part of the show, I want to back up and reintroduce everybody. We got Christine Rogers down at the bottom. Well, she is on my screen. I don't know author Christine Rogers. And okay, yeah, there she is. And she's one of our show sponsors this week. And we have Dagny that just gave us the update on the sighting of the dragon flight. That was, I saw something. That's just me. And my buddy Donnie Mills, he's part of the ETs, and this is his first chance to be with us live. So hopefully we'll be hearing from him more. And then our special guest today, actually, he's over here, past Donnie, Lewis. We're going to fully introduce him in just a minute. But right now, we have a word from our sponsor, Christine Rogers. Christine, were you crying?
Yeah. You did such an amazing job with that.
Well, good.
Sorry.
I hope you get some books sold.
You do. Thank
Hopefully
you.
somebody will come buy your books. All right, guys, we've been telling you about it for over a week now, but we have Lewis Powell IV, and he is our special guest today. He is the founder, I guess you'd call it, right, of Southern Spirit Guide.
Yes.
And also the author of Haunted Alabama, which we're going to talk about that in a minute. But tell us a little bit more about your background and where you came from and how you ended up here.
Well, I'm from LaGrange, Georgia, where I still live. And I always had an interest in, mysterious paranormal things. Started collecting books at a very young age, books of ghost stories, starting with the great Catherine Tucker Wyndham. And over time, I have ended up amassing this rather large library. And about 10 years ago, I took my fascination and decided to start writing my blog, the Southern Spirit Guide. And it was during the time that I had been writing that I ended up writing Southern Spirit Guides Haunted Alabama. And also during this time, I've started to meet people and actually go out and investigate some of these places. And
Nice.
Things have been really fascinating.
Good. All right, before we really get into the meat of things, what's some of your outside interests that have nothing to do with the paranormal?
Well, I'm a theater person. I have a theater degree, and actually
Nice.
that does kind of feed into my ghost passion, in that every good theater worth its salt is going to be haunted by a ghost. And so many of my stories involve theaters. I have other stories as well, but some of my favorite stories are really centered on theaters.
I really like the opening to your page, all about the theaters. That was awesome.
Yes.
You wrote it really well.
Well, thank you. That was my latest blog post.
Okay. I'm sorry, we're having some technical difficulties. Donnie's here at my house using my other laptop, and Lynn's back in the other bedroom trying to get her laptop connected and trying to juggle all this. But I've done some theater. It's been 30, 40 years ago, but
Right.
I can touch on it. Oh God, that just reminded me. You've obviously heard of the Sanger Theater here in Mobile, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
I have a picture that someone gave me that was taken in the theater in the dressing room of a little girl standing in front of a dressing table mirror getting ready.
Uh-huh.
And in the mirror, you see another little girl dressed just like her standing behind her, but in the foreground, there's only the little girl. The
Oh, wow.
standing behind her is only in the mirror. And
Oh, wow.
I saw that picture getting ready for the show and just should have made the connection. But all right, I'll have to share that. I mean, it's on the Strange Journeys podcast page,
Okay.
as well as a bunch of other pictures like that. But I just thought about it. But well, what was there a? I mean, you said you'd always been interested in the paranormal, the weird, and the strange. Was
Right.
there a particular event or a circumstance that just kind of blossomed it?
Well, when I was about 3 or 4, I at that time was an only child, and my sisters had not been born yet. And this one night, my parents were having trouble putting me to bed, and my dad was tasked with being the one to take me in and put me to bed. So he walks me into my bedroom, sits me down on the end of the bed, and says, "Go to sleep." Turns around, goes to the door, and turns off the light and goes into his bedroom. So I sat there for a few moments, just considering my options, and eventually decided I did in fact need to go to bed. So I pull the covers up, and as I'm sliding my feet under the covers, my left foot comes into contact with something that was very cold and very clammy.
Wow.
And in my little mind, I thought, that it felt like the bottom of my foot was touching the bottom of another foot. And I was totally freaked out, jumped out of bed, ran into my parents' room, explained what had happened, and begged them to let me spend the night with them.
Right.
And they declined. And my dad takes me back to my bedroom. We pull the covers back and discover that, of course, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
We had never really experienced paranormal activity in that house, and we didn't after that. But I do recall that around that time, I had started having nightmares about the floor-to-ceiling window that was right next to my bed. And those nightmares involved something trying to come through that window to get me. And, I don't know if that is related to what I felt, or maybe perhaps it was just something that I kind of made up. But that was my first real paranormal experience. And then it was some years later that my mother took me to the public library to hear a storyteller. And this storyteller is telling stories from Catherine Tucker Wyndham. And I was fascinated.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, I was given a copy of her 13 Georgia Ghosts and Jeffrey, and things have never been the same since.
Right. Well, yeah, that kind of gave you the ghost stories, plus, I guess, kind of fit into your writing ability because
Yes.
of the writing style and everything.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you mentioned a while ago you put together this blog and everything. When did you start officially say, "Hey, let's do this"?
Well, that was in August of 2010. And the previous year, I had been laid off from corporate America at the height of the recession. And I had spent nearly 2 years trying to find a job and did not have much luck. And I really needed an escape. So the idea of a blog came to me, and naturally I decided it would need to be about ghosts. And so looking around, I realized there were no really good sources for stories on Southern ghosts. And so I just started writing, and I've created this massive library now. And I have kind of put my name out there, and some people are now recognizing it.
Good. That's awesome. I think there's only one way to go, and that's up. I mean, you built a solid foundation. We're going to get to your Haunted Alabama book in a minute, but are there other books in the works?
Yes.
Planned?
Some years ago, I started working on a haunted theater book, and recently I've started revisiting that. So I'm just about to go on vacation next week, and I'm hoping to spend at least a portion of the week working on that book and
There you go.
gathering all this stuff together and rewriting and working on it.
Right.
Will it have
Excellent.
pictures?
Oh, yes. I try to include photographs whenever I can in my blog. Plus, whenever I visit places, go out and take my own pictures, and quite possibly I might be able to use that Sanger theater picture.
Yes. I mean, I will say this. When it was given to me by a credible friend that I know and wouldn't be putting out false things. But on the other hand, I have not officially confirmed that it was in the dressing room of the Sanger.
Okay.
But my friend that I trust gave it to me, so that's where I stand on that.
In working on my Alabama book, I actually tried to find some information on hauntings at the Sanger, and I wasn't successful in that. I think it was later that I think Elizabeth Parker posted something on Facebook about how she was going to investigate the Sanger, and I was excited to see that.
Yeah, they're rare. There's not been a lot. One or two stories. I think she was a costumer there at one time, saw some things, but I won't even go there because I don't remember the details. But, I will talk about this in a minute, no, that's actually where we're going next. In talking about your Strange LaGrange tour, I wanted to bring that up and talk about that because that's the foundation for this live stream podcast now. Was the tours that I led in downtown Mobile, and I've done hundreds of hours of research on the paranormal and the regular history of Mobile.
Right.
Though I'm no expert, but just tell us about how the Strange LaGrange tour came about.
Well, I ended up. It started out really as an acting job. I was asked to be a part of a ghost tour that they were having, that was sponsored by the local Troup County Historical Society, and they asked me to be a part of this, and I sat down and talked with the storyteller who was organizing it, and she explained what it was, and it was basically they were recreating citizens that were dead, local dead citizens,
right?
And they were having people, recreate these people's lives, and they were calling it a ghost tour because everybody on it was dead. And I immediately told her, no, it doesn't work that way. You can't call it a ghost tour if they're not any actual ghosts. And so they ended up renaming the tour, the Mystery in Our History tour. And so after the tour was over, the head of the historical society said, "I need to talk to you. I understand you know something about ghosts, and I would like to include some real ghost stories." So we talked and continued talking, and then early last year, she just called me out of the blue and said, "We would like to set up a downtown ghost tour. Would you be interested?" And so I jumped at that and started doing the research, and I have so far led, a number of tours. Unfortunately, with all of the coronavirus mess, that had to cease. And but it should be resuming. I think it's the 26th is our first tour after the virus.
Excellent. Because I think one of our ETs, Tim Shepard, his Ravenman tours is kicking off next weekend, the 20th, I think. But he's coming up in a video. Say, hey.
One of my roommates.
Hey, how you doing? That's fine. Like the fried chicken video. Remember that one? The guy singing about fried chicken and his dad keeps coming through the back and doing all kinds of stuff. That was a lot of fun. All right, you mentioned this earlier.
Okay.
Christine brought this up this week as we were going back and forth planning this story or this show. But you did mention that you do investigate some of these places.
Yes, I have. And most of the investigations have been just going on public investigations. But over time, I've kind of gotten to know some of these groups, in particular, Scare of Alabama, that is located up in the Birmingham area. But also, as a result of the tour here, I have been asked to investigate with a group called the Spirits of Lanier, and they have come down and investigated so far 2 locations that are actually here on my tour. The first location, which was the Troup County Historical Society building, we had some just fantastic results. I have only on rare occasions actually had experiences where actual experiences on an investigation. And this investigation actually had something blow on my hand twice.
Wow.
And the first time it happened, I'm looking around to see if there are any vents, to see what would be causing that. And I was actually standing there right next to somebody, and they felt it as well. And so we spoke up, and the person in charge of that portion of the investigation said, if you can do it again, please do. And again, there was this breath on my hand, a sustained breath. And it was really cool and really unexpected. But during this investigation, we ended up getting a lot of spirit box activity. At one point, it even called an elderly investigator a whore, and she was a little offended by that, I think. We also randomly had a spirit speaking Spanish, which was really interesting. And interestingly enough, among these, this group of investigators is comprised of a family, and they're all Pentecostals. And at one point, one of the young ladies thought that she actually had something that had attached itself to her back. And so she tells her grandmother, and her grandmother starts speaking in tongues and swatting away whatever it was on her back. All of this happened on an elevator, and I have never experienced anybody speaking in tongues or anything like that. But to have it happen in the close confines of an elevator was really even more astounding.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
Well, it reminded me of the story that Lynn told in our Personnel Paranormal show, where we were in the Kennedy building downtown Mobile. She and I were in a basement room, and she just just had this eerie feeling come over and said, I got to get out.
Mhm.
And then when we were reviewing the recordings later, just before she said that, she on the recording, you hear the word Allah.
Oh.
And then a conversation in a foreign language.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was a short conversation, honestly, but these were what they call Class A EVPs that I caught on my digital recorder.
Wow.
I mean, I've never taken it to get it, translated or whatever, but it sounded Middle Eastern to me. But that's always cool.
Wow.
All right. Now we're going to transition. Tell us, break down Southern Spirit Guide to us before we get into the story. Just break down what it all means, how it works, how it operates.
I started this blog really to provide some academic rigor, so to speak, with these stories. One of the things I had always seen were I had seen stories where the history would be wrong or the historical facts were totally inaccurate.
Right.
But also, I kind of liked seeing, different authors writing about these different places, and they would include, different stories, and it would seem that neither of them had seen the other's work. So in a way, I'm taking all of this information, pulling it together into a more academically written blog entry, but also making sure that I'm including all the citations and all of the sources, because that's very important in this in the paranormal world. It's something not everybody does,
Right.
but I do definitely appreciate it when people do that. And I did have to kind of figure out how I define the South, and so I decided on a list of 13 states, including the District of Columbia, of course, 13 being a great number. And so I cover Alabama, District of Columbia, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. And I search out information in newspapers and blogs. I, of course, rely on my library very heavily.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's just kind of downright digging on the internet and really trying to see if these are valid resources that I can use.
Right. I think it's cool that you say that, that you're documenting and providing sources. I mean, that was one thing when I did my tour, I had sources. I mean, granted, on a tour, you can't really do that, but,
Right.
Say, oh, I got this from what, but I had it in my notes in case anybody asked.
Yes.
Where did you get this? Well, this was published here, that kind of thing. So that
and one of the wonderful things about having a tour is you get guests on the tour who start telling you stories, and I've been able to actually include some of their stories, and some of them have actually backed up the information that I have.
Exactly.
So it's really just fascinating.
Well, I'm hoping Lynn gets on because that very thing you just brought up, I planned on talking about later. One of the stories that you told, we had somebody on the tour told us something we'd never heard before.
Oh, wow.
Well, it was a personal thing. But just to back up a little bit, when you're talking about the tour, I did want to mention how cool is the name of his tour, guys? Strange LaGrange. Because we are Strange Journeys. And Christine had a question in our private chat about the theater in Auburn, Alabama. Have you ever investigated there, or do you have any stories?
I have read plenty about it and have written about it. I included it in my Alabama book, and also included the information that not only is the old chapel, which was the theater haunted, but then you also have the ghost has supposedly transferred over to the modern theater building.
Wow.
Right.
And I do have a friend of mine who is a theater professor at Auburn, and she confirmed that there are stories told about that building. I don't think she's much of a believer, but it really is. It's fascinating to kind of have my information backed up. But also, I went on there was a ghost tour a couple years ago on Halloween night that was sponsored by two of the guys who wrote the Haunted Auburn Opelika book with Fate Seraphim. And I went on their tour and found out that much more of the university is haunted than I ever suspected.
Wow.
They included that even the Jordan Hare Stadium has activity, and they said that frequently
Oh, wait a minute, Lewis. Wait a
okay.
minute. Is Jordan Hare?
Oh, Jordan Hare.
Jordan.
Sorry, I'm not an Auburn fan. I was
Neither am
raised a Georgia fan.
and neither am I, but being from Alabama, it's Jordan Hare.
Okay, Jordan Hare.
I just I just had to interject that. Sorry.
That's fine. But, the guys on the tour explained that many of the security people would frequently see these kind of amorphous black masses moving up and down the ramps of the theater. Sometimes, they would look up and see the figure kind of leaning over the railing, looking at them. And one of the coolest stories was that a security guard was going through there one night, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees a man on the field dancing. And when he turned to look directly at the figure, it disappeared. But
Wow.
as soon as he turned his head, he could continue to see it out of his peripheral vision. So eventually, he ended up watching this for about 10 minutes, and then the man just danced right off the field and disappeared. I really want to know who that was dancing and celebrating on the field.
Yes.
But again, I had someone on my tour who had worked as a security guard in the stadium, and she confirmed all of this information and said, yes, in fact, there was a great deal of activity throughout that stadium.
Wow, that's amazing. There's Lynn. She made it back. Are you laying down?
That Auburn thing, it might have even been Shug Jordan.
Yeah.
The first time he beat Alabama.
Uh-oh. Yeah. All right. We're going to get into some of these stories in just a minute. Lynn, you're making a lot of racket over there. What's going on with that? Anyway, we're going to go into our next sponsor. Right now, sponsor number 2 for today's show, Frank Loves Books. All right, and we're back, and now we want to get into some specific stories. So, Louis, what I was going to ask is, do you have a favorite or favorite stories out of all these you've compiled? Is there one that sticks out in your mind, or two?
Well, actually, there was after watching your previous podcast, there was a story that I remembered, and that involves a phantom phone call.
Wow.
And
Cool.
this happened at the Mountainside Theater in Cherokee, North Carolina. The Mountainside is a large amphitheater where the outdoor historical drama Unto These Hills has played every summer since 1950. And this theater, it has quite a few years on it, and it really does have a huge amount of paranormal activity associated with it, as well as the city of Cherokee beyond. But this story was told to me by a friend of mine who worked up there. I worked up in the Mountainside Theater several summers when I was in college, and then went back up there to work just a few years ago. And this story happened in 2013, where the organization that runs the theater for Halloween was having a zombie run backstage at the theater and going all the way up into cast housing. And of course, the zombie run is, these people pay and you're basically chased by zombies all the way up to the top of the hill. And one evening after they had shut everything down, two of my friends were actually living up in cast housing, and they were living up there by themselves. And they hear, all these police sirens and an ambulance siren, and they realized that it was coming from the theater. So they went running down the hill to investigate. And there are all these police cars, there's an ambulance, and they ask, well, what's going on? And the police told them that they had received a phone call from a woman who was hysterical, saying she needed help and that, she was at the theater and something was trying to get her. And then she hung up. And
Wow.
they traced the phone call to a payphone that's located on one of the porches right outside the stage manager's office. So they went in and started looking at the payphone. The payphone has been disconnected for some years.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And they never figured out who it was that made this phone call or why any of
Wow.
the spirits would be so upset that they would, have to call 911 and report that something was trying to get them. But I do have a photograph of that payphone.
Yeah, you can share your screen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Should be down at the bottom. Share screen.
All right. Let's see. Oh. Okay. We'll see if this works.
Yeah. Yeah, then it'll pop up a window and you select which tab or whatever you want to.
Okay. Let's see. This will actually share the or maybe. Okay. And I don't know. Can y'all see that?
Not yet.
Okay. This may not work. Okay. It doesn't appear that. Okay.
I mean, down on your little screen at the bottom. Wait a minute. Do that again.
Okay. Let's see. Share screen.
I saw it down at the bottom. Maybe I can. After you do it, I can share it.
Okay. Well, it's on a different tab on my Chrome.
Yeah.
So
it should pop up a little window, and then you select which tab or select tab, Chrome tab or something.
Okay. Let's see. All right.
Yeah.
There it is.
Ooh.
Hello?
Okay, here we go. There it is.
That's a picture of the payphone. And I can scroll up. There's a picture of the Mountainside Theater. That's the top of the house. But this theater has had a tremendous amount of activity. I've had experiences there.
Okay, whoops.
Oh,
We keep losing.
well,
Technical difficulties, folks.
okay. There you go. Oh, right. Okay. But this theater has had a tremendous amount of paranormal activity. I had an experience when I was up there in college. The Cherokee people who still occupy that area believe in a race of little people. And these are essentially, they're kind of like leprechauns in a way, but they are small people who live in the forest, and their job is to protect the Cherokee. And the belief in these people is very widespread among even the modern day Cherokee. And one of the things we were told was if you go down to the theater at night, you have to announce yourself. Otherwise, the little people will play tricks on you. So this one night, I was working in the costume shop while I was there, and so I had a night where I had to do the cast's laundry. And so late one night after the show, I had to walk down the hill to the theater by myself to put the laundry in the dryer. And as I'm heading there, I had been reading about the little people and had learned their name in Cherokee. And so I'm muttering this under my breath in an attempt to memorize the name. So I get down to the theater, I put my laundry in the dryer, and I start back up. And for several yards along the driveway, there is very thick mountain forest on one side. And as I'm walking parallel to this forest, I hear this high-pitched, childish giggle.
Wow.
And I stopped. I looked into the woods. I said, hello. And again, there was this giggle. And I thought, that doesn't sound like any bird I know about. I don't know what this is. Hello? And again, it happened again, and it happened again. So at that point, I was just like, okay, third time's the charm. I'm leaving. So I took off and ran all the way back to my dorm room. And the next day, I spoke with one of my Cherokee friends, and her response was, well, they were laughing at you because you couldn't say their name correctly in the language. But I am very thankful I did not actually see them, because if you see a little person, you're supposed to not speak about it for between 1 to 7 years, depending on the source. And if you speak about it before then, the Cherokee little people will kill you.
Wow.
And there are supposed stories about all of this. Though I have had some friends who did actually see some things, though they waited the prescribed period, and thankfully they are still with us.
Yes. Awesome. All right. I wanted to get into some stories, but give us
Okay.
real quick before we get into some stories. What's your research regimen? I mean, what are your research steps?
Well, I do a lot of Google searching,
Yeah.
haunted places in Lexington, Kentucky, and
Right.
I'll take these lists and start trying to figure out which ones are the most valid sources. Obviously, if it's from a newspaper or some type of news source, I'm more than likely to trust it rather than just a random blog. If I do come across a blog, I try to check sources, see who it is writing this blog, who
Right.
is submitting this information. But also, I've started going out to sites like Ghost in America, which it captures um, uh, firsthand accounts of people who have had paranormal experiences, and I read through a lot of them. A lot of them are, ghosts in private homes, and I
Right.
saw a ghost at my grandmother's house and stuff like that. Occasionally, they will provide a place that I can actually research.
Right.
And I really look into seeing if there is a ring of truth to this story. And I have begun using several of those stories in my writing. But also, it's a matter of talking to people. I've even had people on my blog submit me their experiences, and I've gone on and published several of those.
Good. Well, that's that. I mean, that's basically what I did when I was researching my tours. Started with a broad Google search and then start picking up bits and pieces here and there, and that goes for America and things like that. But finding, well, you mentioned newspapers. The profile picture on our podcast page, Strange Journeys of the Wolf Woman of Mobile.
Okay.
That was the newspaper artist rendering of eyewitness accounts, and it was published
Wow.
in the Mobile Press Register back in the early 70s. I mean, it actually made the papers. But the library in Mobile has a great place called the History and Genealogy section. It's actually a totally separate building, and you have to ask for it, but they have a file behind the desk of actual newspaper clippings of all the weird, strange, and unusual stuff that's ever been published in papers in this area.
A couple
That's
of years
cool.
ago,
Yeah.
I visited the Alabama Department of Archives and History in Mobile, in Montgomery, and I discovered that in their vertical file they have several file folders full of ghost stories. And the amazing thing was finding some of these articles, and many of them were old enough that they likely were used by Catherine Tucker Wendell. So it was really interesting to start seeing that actual source material.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to see that some of this actually made the paper. There was another wolf sighting in Mobile, but it made a paper like the what was it, the Weekly World Report or something, one of those weird off papers. But it's talked about a wolf man that jumped off a ship at the port of Mobile and was cornered in an alley, and the police had to shoot it and kill it. So we've actually had 2 wolf sightings in Mobile.
Wow.
If you believe it. But all right, we're going to go into. Hey, where's Beth? In our chat, Tommy just put, "Howdy, Beth. Hope you're well." I don't know what that's all about. So, guys, this is off the cuff. We're going to go into some specific stories here. Some of them I have on the list. Like I said, ETs did not get me stories. They were supposed to get me stories. so I had to pick some of them. Dagny got me one. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But one that was my favorite and was actually the basis, not the basis, but it was what got me started researching the paranormal and history in general in Mobile, was the Boynton Oak in Mobile. Louis, tell us that one real quick, because I mean, I've told it thousands of times. If you remember.
The story dates back to the early 19th century when there was a gentleman who he and a friend were seen walking down a local street, and his friend turned up murdered.
Right.
And they ended up arresting the gentleman he was seen with and charging him with the murder. And he was condemned to death and executed in a tree that is now a part of that is now in. No, he was executed near the Church Street Cemetery,
Right.
and he was buried in the cemetery. But before his death, he said, "If you bury an acorn in my hand, if I am innocent, and a tree will grow from that acorn." And in fact, a tree did grow out of his grave.
Yeah.
And according to Mrs. Wyndham, people still hear whispers around that tree, whispers of "I'm innocent." And so it seems that that man's spirit is still kind of hanging around.
Yeah, that's what they say. And now what you're looking at now is an actual picture from a book called The Tree Being the Strange Case of Charles R.S. Boynton. It was published around 1901, 1902, somewhere in there. And this shows an actual picture of the oak tree that sprang up from his grave.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he was hung somewhere, some other place. I've never found where he was hung. But there's been some controversy of late as to which oak tree is his. and, well, and I'll explain why. Because, excuse me, he couldn't be buried in the cemetery because he was a convicted murderer. So they buried him just outside of the cemetery walls, and in the what they call the gatekeeper's garden. And you can actually go there. And I think you mentioned it in your book. It's on Bayou Street.
Yes.
And there's a big church right across the road from it. But luckily, they've not developed that little area. And there are 3 possible oak trees in that general location. Someone went in there and they put up signs around it, and they're like a protected oak tree or something like that. And there's a sign there, and then several posts in the ground protecting the tree. But we usually ended our tours right there, and we would talk about the Boynton oak, and we would talk about the 3 different oak trees. There were only 3. Now, this is the actual only evidence we have of the supposed oak tree that sprang up from his grave is this etching. It was a copper etching from the book. Last I checked, there was only 1 of these books available to buy. There's 2 in the history and genealogy section at the library that you can't buy, you can't check out. You can only sit there and read them. But this is from that book. And if you'll look, the wall is right behind it. The tree itself has 3 main trunks.
Okay.
And the headstone has been lost to time. Well, again, this is just me. As we would go in there and we would end with an investigation there, and we found some interesting things. As a matter of fact, I was telling the story one night. We had our little ghost apps running, and as I was telling the story, I screwed up and I said the name of, because there was an unrequited love. Lewis gave you the basics of it, but this is a big story with a lot more details. And there was, he loved her, but she loved him, and and all this kind of. It was weird. It was one of those triangles, and I said the woman's name wrong, and one of those ghost apps spoke up and said the correct one. But anyway, to me personally, this is the tree that I think it is. I'm gonna flip back and forth between them. You notice there's 3 main trunks on that tree. And of course, it's twisted a little different, but then we've had 100 years of hurricanes and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
And look at its proximity to the wall.
Mhm.
Excuse me. I have actually got down on my hands and knees and dug down in the wall. That's not the original wall, but it was
Okay.
the foundation of the original wall. But that's a different tree than the one that is popularly thought it is thought to be. But that's
Okay.
again, and we went through our investigations, and you know, we would just put it out there to our tour group and say, what do y'all think? Here's the tree that is popular opinion that says it is. It's got all the posts around it. It's got the sign up. And there was another tree. Donnie, are you holding up your hand?
Well, I was going to say, when we went on that, we kind of looked around at it, and it did the flashlight test on command, went on, went off. So it was kind of an eerie thing, for that to happen.
Yeah. And like I mentioned before, the only way we can have positive proof is to get some ground penetrating radar in there.
Yes.
Find the actual grave. Come on,
That's what I was gonna recommend.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's just, which by the way, did you see in the background of this picture?
Mm-hmm.
What do you see in the sky?
A circle.
One of those sky cloud circles. Remember, I posted a live thing the other night?
Oh.
Live. I took this picture myself, and what you see in the background there, that oblong oval shape, it's actually starting to break up, because when I noticed it, it was a lot clearer and a lot more empty. It was more of a hole in the clouds. So by the time I thought, oh my God, that's what that is, and went to take a picture of it, it was starting to dissipate. But anyway, I digress. We'll have to. I mean, I want to do more research into Boynton Oak, because, like I said, that's the story that got me. For some reason, that one grabbed my attention, and I just fell in love with the story, and that's what I built my tour around. That was the big story and finale of my tour. We do an investigation there, letting the crowd decide which tree was actually, Boynton's oak, because, like I said, there are 3 viable contenders there, but the one that they say it is only has 1 main trunk, and there's another one there that only has 2 main trunks, and this is the only one that has 3. So that's just me. And plus, like Donnie said, we did the flashlight experiment there just about every week, and people can say what they want about the flashlight experiment. It's just amazing when you ask a question and something, and the flashlight comes on. It happens. So, all right, we'll go on. The Richards DAR house.
Oh, yes.
That one, I remember, when I met the docent there, I don't remember her name, but they've got a nice crew of ladies, and their exact words, they have happy ghost. They don't have any of the weird, creepy, strange stuff like that just scare you and you want to get out. They just have fun stuff. And what was one of the things, Lewis, that you gleaned out of those stories?
I wrote about the DAR house so long ago that I don't really recall.
Okay. Well, the most famous story coming out of there is the marbles.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, it was some friends of ours that were actually doing that. I know the man in the group that was actually investigating there. I wasn't there, but I mean, he told me about it, and then I started hearing about it everywhere else. He says, we left some marbles there, and told the spirits, the children, and said, if you will move these marbles for us, we'll leave them for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was immediately or they came back later, but it was the marbles had been moved. And so they left the marbles there. Now, a funny story, we joined them sometime later on an investigation there. And so in one of the bedrooms, I do a lot of that in my investigation. We got a lot of old school props that we use. I have a few of the electronic stuffs and the apps, but not a lot. I do a lot of the old school stuff, and I'd set up some of these marbles on a bed.
Mhm.
And this was one of those public ghost hunts, which honestly I don't really dig those. I'd rather it be 2 or 3 people. I don't like big crowd, big groups. That's just me. I don't like long EVP sessions. I like just 1 or 2 minutes, shut off the recorder. 1 or 2 minutes, shut off the recorder. That's just me, because I have sat up all night listening to recordings and it'll wear you out. But honestly, I've seen the sun come up, sitting there on the computer going, okay, and hitting start and stop and start. And so that gets old. Anyway, I'd set up the marbles on the bed, put a camera on it, a static video camera, and left the room. And first took a couple pictures of it to verify the basic pattern I had. Shoot. Came back a few minutes later, and the marbles were in disarray, total disarray. And I'm like, oh my God, it's happened again. It's happened again. And somebody walked over and said, oh, what do you mean? I said, the marbles, they're in different places. I said, I had them set up, like previously, that if they would move them, then whatever, we just wanted them to move them. And he was like, oh, I didn't know you were doing something there. I moved them around. I'm like, so we lost out on that opportunity. I want to show you, well, first off, I want to show you, this is what we're talking about, the Richards DAR house. But I had a unique experience there other than that. Let me find it. I've got a short video, which I know we're at an hour, folks, but we're having a good time here. But that was the Richards DAR house, and we may skip some of the stories because I know we're running over an hour now. But I was a speaker at a paranormal conference. It was called SpectreCon in downtown Mobile. I was one of the speakers. Met Christopher St. Booth, the paranormal filmmaker. We're still friends today. Great guy. He's got some great movies. You got to go see the Booth Brothers movies. They're on DVD and on I think Prime. But they're about the only ones I can stomach anymore as far as these ghost hunting shows. But they actually make movies and they do the research themselves, and they're good stuff. They've got a few fictional movies out there. But anyway, for this conference, I was being interviewed by a local reporter, and you'll see who it is in just a minute. But I want to point out something. When I did my tours, we used dowsing rods because they're cheap, inexpensive, easy to make. I built them all myself, and we'd pass them out on the tour and let people play with them during the tour. We'd have our investigation times, and they would be sitting out there with their dowsing rods and just seeing, if they get a response, and we got some good response. Well, I'm being interviewed by this guy, and those of you that are local will recognize it when you see him. But this is what made it to the TV, and I'll tell you what didn't get put on there right after this. Hold on.
Halloween is still 3 weeks away, but a Mobile paranormal group plans to haunt the port city this weekend. That's when Old South Paranormal will present SpectreCon 2014, its first ever paranormal convention.
Among the events offered during the convention will be a special ghost walk offered by Spirit Expeditions. Much like New Orleans, Mobile boasts an ample amount of haunted hangouts in our downtown area. Spirit Expeditions offers ghost tours in downtown Mobile every weekend. This Friday, they'll have one tailor-made for this weekend's event.
We provide dowsing rods where they can use those during the investigations. Sometimes we have digital recorders for doing EVP sessions and things like that. Some guests even bring their own equipment, and so it's an interactive experience.
Tomorrow evening, Local 15's Darwin Singleton joins the members of the group as they preview Saturday's ghost hunt experience at one historic house in downtown Mobile. For a complete rundown of SpectreCon 2014 events and guest speakers, you can visit our website. Their website, we have a link at ours, local15tv.com.
Now, those of you that are local, you know who that was.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm
and
not local anymore.
no, but you know him. Why are y'all muted anyway?
Who was the guy with no beard? I remember him.
I don't know. But did you notice at one point we were on the front porch and he's standing there with the dowsing rods?
Mhm.
They cut the most unique spot. I mean, you saw he was holding them and they were spinning. Okay.
Mhm.
But here's what led up to that. What you didn't see. I was explaining to him sitting there on the front porch how the dowsing rods worked. And, we tried a couple of questions. Nothing happened. We tried a couple more questions. Nothing happened. So then I was like, well, um, why don't we try to communicate with the children? They say there's a lot of children here that played with the marbles. So I just made a general, hey, any of you kids that are listening, any of your children that are here with us, why don't you touch these dowsing rods and let Darwin know you're here? And that's when they begin to spin. And Darwin's eyes got as big as saucers. And he was like, oh my God, I'm not doing this. And he was freaked out. But like I said, they didn't leave that part in. So anyway, but that's what we saw there. And we had a lot of good times. And if you notice in that clip where they were going over some equipment, it was just a quick shot, but Mark over there with Old South Paranormal, he's the one that actually put out the marbles and had them moved, and that's the story that everybody remembers. Central Fire Station. It's right there. If you know downtown Mobile, it's right across the road from Moe's Barbecue, but that's the Central Fire Station right there. And do you remember that story, Lewis?
Yes, yes. That was the story where they had some type of device that would have alarms on it that would ring and let them know where there was a fire. And they ended up having some lights on there that lit up, even though the device didn't have electricity.
Right.
And that was enough to make national news.
Yes, it did. I mean, this is the actual alarm board here.
Mm-hmm.
And you see there's a blue light on the top right and then a red light further down.
Yes.
There's still no electricity connected to that board. There's still no electricity, but it has been known to go off. It's been disconnected since the early 60s.
Yes.
But they have more than that there.
Okay.
They're a former fire chief that ran that station. When he retired and passed away, he's been seen there off and on through the years. So
okay.
That's are you taking notes?
Yes, I am.
But he has been seen there off and on throughout the years. And then, of course, we can talk about Phoenix Fire. And my friend James Rossier Jr. has investigated there several times and had some unique stuff. But the Battle House Hotel.
Yes.
This is a unique place. You tell the story of the bride, correct? That her husband left?
Yes. There was a story that this couple had gotten married, and if I remember correctly, the husband left shortly after the wedding.
Right.
And when he didn't return for a while, the bride ended up killing herself in despair.
And there's a follow-up to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Doggone, I should have looked it up. Where people can go into that room where the wedding was at today, and they'll see a woman standing there weeping. And when they go up to speak to her, she disappears.
Okay.
Now, there's more to it than that, because Oh crap! I should. Well, here's the thing. My computer with all my research from my tours died.
Ooh.
And we've got it in the hands of my brother-in-law, who is an expert with computers, to try to resurrect it. So y'all pray, keep your fingers crossed. Because I
Oh,
have
that's rough.
tons of research on my computer. Anyway, um, but while we were on tour one night, we had a guest that turned out to be an engineer who worked for the city, and he confirmed one thing to us, which I didn't need confirmation, but still, it was kind of neat to have it. You know how it is, Lewis, on tour when you're telling a story and somebody says, "Hey, yeah, I know about that."
Yes.
We talked about the tunnels underneath Mobile, and he was an engineer, and he's like, "Hey, I work down in these tunnels all the time." He said, "I'm down in the basements of these buildings." But he told us a story about the Battle House Hotel, and I wish Lynn, are you with us? There she is. Okay. Help me remember this. What? Oh, she's having issues.
Something that I think is interesting.
We can't hear you, baby.
My cousin. Why?
What? Okay, now we can hear you.
My
Well, it
cousin
keeps
was
cutting in and
telling me
out.
about it. Let me move somewhere. My cousin was telling me a story she had heard. Story, and the people in the story were related to my cousin. Found that out 2 months ago.
About Battle House?
Yeah.
Okay, what story?
The woman, the bride, and the guys that went in and beat her fiance up
Yeah.
were my cousin.
Oh, okay. You're still cutting in and out, but so the bride and groom were related to your cousins.
The bride and her brother that beat up the
Oh,
groom
you're
and killed him.
talking about the honor killings. Okay, so your cousins are related to the honor killing people, which that's a whole other episode, folks.
Yes.
Whole other episode. Go look up the honor killings at the Battle House Hotel. That's some wild stuff. Anyway, this engineer was telling me that they were working on the second or third floor one night. Boy, Lynn, your computer's causing a lot of static and feedback. But he was telling me that they've got some safety windows that can only be opened with a key.
Mm-hmm.
So they were in there checking some things and, looked out the window, pushed the drapes back, and was looking around. And anyway, they came back a little while later, and those drapes that they had been moving were stuck in the window, flapping in the breeze outside, and the safety windows were still locked.
Jeez.
So,
Wow.
and he asked his partner, "Have you been back up here?" "No, I haven't been back up here." "Well, how did those drapes get stuck out the window?" "I don't know. I don't know." Anyway, there's so much more. Let's go on to Dagny. Your boss's grandfather owned.
I'll just summarize it real quick.
Okay.
I was looking at your page, Lewis, and I was going down, and it's funny that you guys keep mentioning that you have someone on the tour that knows something about it, and I came across Redmont Hotel, and that caught my attention. I was like, "Oh, my boss owns Redmont Hotel," and I was like, "Let me ask him." So I texted him and continued reading. And I just sent him a message saying, "Do you know anything about Redmont Hotel being haunted?" Basically.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Oh, let me tell you." He said, his grandfather, Clifford Stiles, was the original owner of that place. And his brother's name is Clifford Stiles, named after his grandfather.
Okay.
And then he said that Hank Williams is known to show up at Redmont Hotel
Mhm.
quite often, and he said that a lot of the housekeepers tell him that they will not go on the 13th floor alone. They don't want to,
Mhm.
because of different ghost stories and things like that, things they hear. They have also heard the dog barking, and they've also heard his grandfather
Wow.
screaming. He said he was well known to
Oh.
yell all the time, and they don't like to go up there because his grandfather had that area, and he had a dog up there that lived with him. And he said that 3 or 4 days before Hank Williams died, he was putting on a show, and he stayed in his grandfather's hotel in Defuniak Springs.
Okay.
His grandfather owned multiple hotels.
Mhm.
And in Defuniak Springs, Florida, his grandfather owned another hotel, and Hank Williams stayed there for the night. And he was so drunk that they called a doctor. They thought he was going to die.
Mhm.
Oh my
The
God.
doctor comes in, and the doctor gives him a shot of something and tells Hank Williams that night, he says, if you keep drinking like this, you're going to die within a year. Well,
Right.
so that doctor's name was Dr. Evans.
Mhm.
And 3 or 4 days later, Hank Williams stayed at the Redmont.
Mhm.
Well, he died there in the Redmont those few days later. And that's the ghost that they definitely like to refer to as the ghost that's there.
Mhm.
Well, my boss, Bruce Evans McAlpin, was named after the doctor that gave him that shot.
Oh.
And so not only does his grandfather was the owner, now he's the owner of Redmont.
Okay.
And he has housekeeping staff tell him all the time that
Mhm.
his grandfather is up there yelling at them, barking at them, they won't go up there alone. So I thought that'd be interesting to let you know about that.
Yes. Well, I before I started doing my LaGrange tour, I did a tour in Birmingham, and we would always stop right outside the Redmont, and we would have hotel staff come and try to shoo us away because they didn't want their hotel being on this tour. And of course, the name Clifford Stiles did come up, and I remember always saying that he was just a very particular person, and he insisted things be done
Particular.
in a very particular way, and that he would still return to
Make sure.
make sure the housekeepers are still doing things that way.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, I work for his grandson, and I will say his grandson is particular.
well, I guess
Perfect.
those things run in the
Likes things
family.
perfect.
But
All right, go
going
ahead.
back to your Hank Williams story, Hank Williams did not die in the Redmont, but he stayed there on the trip that he would die on. He died, I think, 2 days after he stayed at the Redmont. And the story in his biography, he was heading up to a performance New Year's Eve in Charleston, West Virginia. And he had a young man, Charles Carr, who was just a young college student, that he hired to drive him. And they left, I think it was Andalusia, Alabama, and headed up to Montgomery. He performed in Montgomery once in one or two places, and his spirit is supposed to return to that place. But then they headed up the next morning to Birmingham. They and he was being driven down the street, and they were initially going to stay at the Tutwiler, and which was at that time the best hotel in the city. And this young driver drove right past the Tutwiler, and when Hank Williams brought it up, the guy just decided to swing a Yui right in the middle of the street, which attracted the attention of a passing cop. And the cop came over and had him roll his window down. And what are you doing, boy? And the young man tried to explain what was happening. And eventually he said, well, I have Hank Williams sitting in the back seat. The officer was totally unimpressed and basically said, you just need to keep on moving. So they drove on a little further and ended up deciding to check into the Redmont. And about 20 minutes after they had gotten into their room, there was a knock at the door, and Hank Williams went to answer the door, and there were 3 attractive young ladies standing there. And he looked at them and he said, where are y'all from? And one of them said, heaven. And he promptly invited all 3 of them into their room, and they spent the night with him. The next morning, Hank Williams headed out to Charleston, and he decided to stop in Knoxville at the Andrew Johnson Hotel, which is still standing. And they stayed at the Andrew Johnson for several hours. And during the course of that, Hank Williams contacted a doctor and had the doctor write him a prescription for a pain medication. And so he got that prescription filled, and then he decided to continue on his journey to West Virginia. And early the next morning, Charles Carr stopped the car in, I don't remember the name of the town, a very small town in West Virginia, and decided to check out to make sure Hank Williams was okay. He opened the back seat of the car door. He opened the back door, and Hank Williams was dead. And he died somewhere on that drive.
Wow.
And the story involves that he is supposed to also haunt the Andrew Johnson, as well as the site where his car pulled over.
Yeah.
I have I ran the Hank Williams Songwriter Contest for 4 years in Georgiana, where he was born.
Yes.
That's where we met.
They said they finally found out that when he went to sleep in the back, he had died of carbon monoxide poisoning because the windows were up because it was so cold. And for years it was like, oh, he drank himself to death. He drank himself to death. Mm-hmm. But they finally found out it was carbon monoxide poisoning, and nobody, could have ever thought about that.
Wow. New info. That's where Donnie and I met. Was at the Hank Williams Festival in Georgiana. Yep. 2004, I think it was, because I was working on my CD. All right, real quickly, let's do one more hotel.
Well, actually, I have another story I can tell about the Redmont.
Oh, please do.
There was another event that happened at the Redmont sometime in the early 30s. One evening, the manager of the Redmont got a call from the manager of another hotel, and he said, there are 2 young men who have just robbed some of my guests, and I have a feeling they're probably going to another hotel, so you need to be on the lookout for these gentlemen. The manager had just seen 2 very strange-looking young men come into the lobby and get on the elevator. So the manager decided he needed to call the police. He called the police, and they went up, I think it was the 6th floor, and they found these 2 young men coming out of a guest's room. They had just robbed this guest, and the police, of course, tell these men to stop. They opened fire. The thieves opened fire on the police. The police, of course, fired back. The thieves were able to make their way down to the lobby of the hotel, and they actually had a shootout between the police and the thieves in the middle of the lobby on Halloween night.
Wow.
And one of both of the thieves were hit, and one of the detectives was injured, but the two young men made their way out the door. One of them dropped onto the sidewalk and died there. The other young man, who was just wounded, though covered with blood, made his way to the southern part of the city, where he was later arrested after somebody called the police because this young man is walking around covered with blood. And so I believe that there is possibly some spiritual remnants of that event taking place at the Redmont as well.
Yes, on Halloween night.
Yes, Halloween night. How appropriate.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. All right. Who recognizes this?
Malaga Inn.
Uh-huh. Here's another view.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
That picture was taken on tour one night, and I think, Christine, you were on that tour, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And we used it as a header for a while. When we started the tours, we went around the whole area, and any place like that that we were going to use as a location, we stopped in and talked to them, made sure it was okay. They told us point blank, no, we don't want to have anything to do with the paranormal. Now, granted, this was, after it's already been publicized. There's a YouTube video out there about the Malaga Inn, and, the different sightings, the one in white, and, this kind of thing. But they said they didn't want to have anything to do with it. They felt like it gave them a bad reputation business-wise. So ironically, I agreed to it. Well, I say ironically, I agreed to it. And then ironically, the very first tour, we're down there and we cross the street because we don't want to, the sidewalk goes right in on their property. So out of respect, we would cross the street. And from the other side of the street, we would tell the stories. The first night we were there, this is where the ironically comes in, sorry. We're standing there telling it, and the front door of the hotel opens, and the owner walks out. And we're like, oh, crap. Here we go. He walks straight to us across the street. And before, in the middle of the street, he's like, hey, everybody, how y'all doing tonight? And he knows what we're there for. And he said, y'all come on in, take a look around. He invites, we had, Lynn, about 25, 30 people. We had a big group that night. And he invites the whole group in. We go into the courtyard. And so I'm talking to him, and I'm like, are you fine with this? Yeah. So anyway, I actually talked him into telling some of the ghost stories. So I didn't even have to tell the stories. The owner of the place told the stories, which, oh God, there's several there. Have you heard the one, Lewis, about the shaking chandelier?
I don't believe so.
Well, the man that owns it now, technically his mother owns it, and her older sister was the original owner that actually made it into Malaga Inn.
Okay.
And she occupied the room directly above the lobby where there's a giant chandelier in the lobby.
Yeah.
And they say that that when she's not happy with something going on in the hotel, she's been known to pace in her room so dramatically that it shakes the chandelier in the lobby.
Wow.
They say that still goes on today. Lynn and I stayed there, was it year before last? On our anniversary. We stayed the weekend. As a matter of fact, I'll show you. You can't see it, it's cut off. But on the second story, all the way on the left, there's a balcony, and that was the room we stayed in. Can't see it here either. It's the wrong angle. And here's the room 007. I took this picture myself when she and I were down there, where the lady in white has been spotted. There's an inside balcony in the inner courtyard and the lady in white has been seen right in front of that room. We didn't see anything when we were there, though. but we had a cool time. All right, before we wrap this up, one of our last sponsors, one of our ETs is Tim Shepard out of Topeka, Kansas, and he has Raven Wind Tours. I hope everybody wrote that phone number down. If you're in Kansas, the state, not the band, make sure to check out Raven Wind Tours. I've mentioned this before to everybody, but Tim and I were tour guides with a now defunct national tour company, as well as Andrea that couldn't be here today because it's her dad's birthday. Wasn't that it, guys? She couldn't. She was. Everybody's thinking. I think that's what she said. I think she was watching. She may comment here in a second and get on to us, but I think that was it. And Beth is watching. Looks like. But anyway, we met. We were all tour guides at a previous company. I ended up being their national training manager and a regional manager. But Tim and I both took our tours from out of that company, and mine. I mean, we both kept doing our tours, modified, of course, because it was now our own companies. But we evolved. Ours evolved into what it is today. He's doing Raven Wind Tours and having some great success. They start again, as you saw in the ad, June 20th. So if you're in the Kansas area, please check that out. Well, Lewis, before we call it a day, if someone wants to submit a story to you, do they just go to southernspiritguide.org or what's the process?
And just email me at southernspiritguide at blogspot. southernspiritguide@gmail.com.
Okay, excellent. What are you? I mean, I know we're talking haunted ghost stories from the South, but is there anything specific that you're looking for, or something that you are not looking for? Is there a story that you wouldn't?
Well, I'm not as interested in private homes or
right.
It's a story where you saw something at your grandmother's house, because those are not as easily researched as public or semi-public locations. I prefer to really stick to those places where I can find a dearth of information rather than just a private home in some random town.
Yeah, makes sense. Something verifiable.
Yeah.
I mean, the grandmother's house stories are basically for the local paranormal teams.
Right.
But before we go, has anybody else got any questions for Lewis? I know I've kind of dominated this, but anyway.
I just want to say,
go ahead.
Dagny, Christine, it's a pleasure to finally get to see who you are.
Nice to see you too.
Lewis, it has been nothing short of an honor to sit here and soak in things that you've told us.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
And Lynn, go make supper.
Oh.
He's been dogging her all afternoon. Oh, actually, we have plans to go to Stoney's barbecue after this. So, guys, just calm down. Be jealous.
See y'all later. Thank you.
Go ahead and be jealous. All right.
You had your tours on.
I get you. About half of what you're saying is not heard. I'm sorry, baby.
What nights do you do tours?
Oh, I do my tours on Friday nights at 7 p.m. and they start out at the True County Historical Society and Legacy Museum on Main Street in downtown LaGrange, Georgia.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up, baby.
Here in a few weeks to go to Toccoa.
Oh, that's right. That's right. She's taking a trip. She'll be going through there, so maybe she'll get to be on your tour.
I'd love to have you.
We'll set that up. Dagny, you did awesome.
Thanks, guys.
That was great.
It was good to meet you, Lewis.
It's nice to meet you.
I actually have a recording of my boss, audio recording that I can give you of him telling his story, which I remember now that him saying that Hank Williams was in progress to somewhere else.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'll give you those audio files.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
And I'm going to let a cat out of a bag here because nobody knows it but the ETs, but Christine is working on her next book.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Actually, I have a couple of them. As soon as I get a certain CD, I have my husband going to be editing one, my eldest daughter putting another one into the computer for my husband to edit, which she's been working on that for a while, and I'm working on 2, actually.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And, Tim Shepard, one of the Ravenwind Tours, is working on his second book and just made me an offer and that honored me. He asked me to be one of his proofreaders and editors. So I'm going to get to do that for his new book. Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. Did we put that in comments or is that just private chat? His tours are $20 a tour, if you have $20 a person if you go through LaGrange. Yeah.
Yes. And we do have a website where we sell the tickets online. It's through Eventbrite. So just go to Eventbrite and look up Strange LaGrange.
Can you buy the tickets in person when you get to the tour, or is it reservations?
Well, at the moment, I think they're just going to require reservations because they're not letting anybody in the building because of the virus mess. But general tours, you can just show up and buy your tickets in person.
Yeah. All right. So it's eventbrite.com?
Yes.
Okay. And then search for Strange LaGrange.
Yes.
Okay. I'm putting that in a comment right now.
All right.
I should have made a banner of it. I didn't even think of it, but thank you, Lynn, for bringing that up. All right, guys, it's about that time. We've had an awesome show. We're going to close it out with our closing vid, and if I can find it, there it is. We're still learning, folks. We're still learning. But we're going to do our little closing outro, whatever, and then come back and say goodbye. All right, thanks everybody for watching and hanging with us. We went a little longer than normal today, but I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed having Lewis here. You are awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was amazing.
Thank you for
Nice to
having me.
meet you.
It's been a pleasure. Nice to meet all of you.
We'll be looking for more from the ETs, and we'll be looking for more from Lewis Powell with Southern Spirit Guiding. And more stories coming up, I'm sure. Hey, we'll see y'all in 2 weeks. Thank y'all for being here. Oh, and I think the next show is are we doing Black Eyed Kids? Ooh, I think we're doing Black Eyed Kids next time, guys. So we'll be waiting for that one. It's going to be a wild one. See y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.